I want to go to another flashpoint we haven't focused on enough, and that, of course, is Ukraine. How disturbed should we be by this news that North Korean soldiers are in Ukraine, that the Russians are now sending in North Korean soldiers?
Well, I think we should be concerned on two fronts. First of all, it demonstrates the Russians are really struggling. The Americans tell me that 120,000 Russian soldiers have been killed, 120,000 in the Ukraine war since February 2022, and 500,000 wounded. I mean, it's a terrible toll that Putin has imposed, ultimately, he has imposed on his people. So the reports are that something like 10 to 12,000 North Korean troops have been recruited to help the Russians. The problem with this is, talking of escalation and de-escalation, they are escalating this war into something that is becoming, if you like, an international war. And that is the great fear, that all of these wars will gradually come together. You know, China versus Taiwan, the Iranians against the Israelis using their proxies, and the Russians against the Ukrainians, and they're all supporting each other. And this is a very great danger, which does underline the really important need for the Americans and their allies to provide truly effective deterrence. For all of those adversaries to understand, if they keep going this way, then terrible things will happen to them.
I think I should just correct myself on the fly. I said those North Korean troops were in Ukraine. That's not the case. We know they're in Russia now, and there are fears they'll be used to supplement Russian troops in Ukraine. Yeah, expected to be on their way to Ukraine, but no evidence they're there yet. Just on that, talking about the role, the importance of American leadership, let's look at the election that's just over a week away now, and Kamala Harris out today making, you know, very serious words of concern to the nation about Trump and Mike Kelly's words again that he's a fascist and he likes Hitler. I mean, this seems like a very desperate ploy this late in the campaign, doesn't it?
Sure. I mean, this does illustrate the closeness of the race and the desperation as the race comes to an end. I mean, desperation on both sides. But, I mean, the Democrats have been running this line that Donald Trump is a fascist and a Nazi and everything under the sun. I mean, it's clearly, whatever you think of Donald Trump, it's clearly completely absurd, completely absurd. And I've been in America for the last few weeks. Obviously, the American people know it's just political rhetoric and a scare campaign. I don't think it's helping them. I think the problem for Kamala Harris is people think she doesn't have a clue about policy issues. And whilst, in my experience, Americans don't much like Donald Trump, and they certainly don't like the things we don't like about him, they think on policy he's quite good. And they prefer his economic policy and his security policy and his international policies to Kamala Harris's. So running this scare campaign is all the Democrats have left. It may work, but I'm not sure. I think it remains neck and neck.
Alexander Downer, thanks again for joining us.
It's a pleasure, Chris.